Now, as I usually mention, I'm only recording the audio from my headset. So if you have questions, you won't be in the recording if that matters to you. But if you do have questions, feel free to interrupt me at any time. You guys so far this semester have been pretty shy, so I definitely encourage you to ask questions if there's things that you don't understand or things that you want to just go over again. We're all learning. This is an intro coding class, so I don't expect that you know anything already. So don't worry if your questions seem simple or even off topic. I'm happy to go over anything that doesn't make sense. So yeah, if you do have questions, feel free to interrupt me. You can use the chat or the text chat whenever. But let's get into it. So today we're going to be looking at how to add text into our P5 sketch. And so it's not too hard. It's pretty similar to how we add, other shapes like circles and rectangles and stuff like that. But the change obviously is that we're using text, so we have to have some data that shows the text. So we can find here's a reference for text in the P5 website. And you can see there's actually a few different functions related to text. Text is the function that actually, tells P5 what text to draw and where. But we also have things like the font that we want to use, the size, the alignment. Uh, there's a few other ones as well that I don't see on here, but this is just kind of an overview. And you can see a few examples here of using text in different ways. And then there's the basic syntax here, which we see is the string is our first parameter. That's the string of sequences or the sequence of characters that we want in our string, in our text. Then we have the X position and the Y position, just like we would have with any other shape. And then these two optional parameters determine the size of the text box. So if we want our text to go on one line, we just ignore those. If we want it to go down to the next line, then we use those optional parameters. And yeah, that's our text. Um, so let's write up a real quick example. I'm going to go over to my editor, and I'm just going to draw some text. So if I want to draw text, I just use the word text. That's the function that we use. And then here's how it's going to be a little bit different is that we want to write something inside of our first argument that we want to show up on the screen. So we need to use quotation marks. So remember when we're writing a string, that's just a piece of data, which is just a string of letters here. Let me check this size. I'm going to make this a bit bigger. So this is different from what we've been working on more recently, like variables. So you could have a variable. You obviously couldn't have a variable that looked like that. You would have to put a underscore or take out the space here. But what we're writing is not a variable. It's just the data. So it's just what we want to show on the screen or in the canvas. So we can write, that's our first argument. If I run it like this, we don't see anything because P5 needs to know where we want this to go. And so we can put in an X argument and a Y argument. And there we go. We have our first piece of text. That's the default setting. So you can see it's a pretty boring default Arial font or sans serif font. And it's got a default fill, which is black, and it's pretty small. So one of the first things we'll probably want to do is increase the size. So I can set the text size. This is the height of the text by pixels. So if I say text size is 100, then it's going to be pretty big. And the text size itself should be basically like from here to here, this should be 100 pixels. It might not be exactly 100 depending on your font. Your fonts usually have like a block like this, and then they have their letters written into them. So like if the M doesn't go all the way at the top, you might have like a little gap up here or a little gap down here. But whatever the size of the font is going to be that 100 pixels. Um, so we can also change just the fill, like if we say fill is blue, we'll get a blue fill there. This is actually, let's increase the size of our canvas a little bit so we can see the whole thing. Okay. And then we can actually add a stroke to text. It's not there by default, but if we say stroke is like pink, it'll throw it on there. It's very light, so it's hard to see, but if we say stroke weight is 10, then we'll start to see that stroke weight. The pink is a little bit too light, so let's try purple. Okay, and you're going to notice that there's these little edges at the top. We're going to learn how to deal with that in a little bit. Um, but those are kind of the basic functions with text. The fill and the stroke are just like how they work with other shapes, but we can apply them to our block of text. Okay, so that's the basics. So just to review really quickly, a string is a data type that just consists of a string of letters. Um, if you click on here, this is the MDN for string. It shows a bunch of different examples of different types of strings. Strings have some like specific qualities and properties that we're going to use in a little bit. But basically, a string just has to have quotation marks, and then you can really write anything that you want to in the middle. Like I can put extra spaces in here, and it'll just move them over. I can put one, I can put like characters from other languages. I could put a dollar sign in here. I could put, uh, I don't know if it does emojis. It probably does, but I don't remember how to create emojis. Maybe I can right click and go to emoji. Let's see what happens if I put an emoji in here. Does it render it? No, it doesn't like that. Okay, so it is a little bit limited in terms of the characters. Let's see what it says. Okay, so JavaScript doesn't recognize that emoji. Okay, that's okay. We can just write, or no, wait, I forgot to put a quotation mark at the end. That was the error. Oh, it does do emojis. Okay, that's cool. So yeah, we can do an emoji. Anything that the computer recognizes as a character, it can render in P5. I actually didn't know that it did that. I don't think I've ever seen that before. So that's kind of cool. That might be new too. Anyway, anything that we put as a sequence of characters is a string, and we can save this as a variable. So I could take this whole thing and copy this and go up to the top of my code and say variable string equals this. And then I can put my string in here like that. Oops, I guess string is a function. Let's just call this MMP string. There we go. So I can create a variable just like I would with any other value, like a number or a color, and then I can use that variable as a stand-in for what my data is, and then I can, change it and do stuff with it. We'll do that in a little bit. I actually forgot to start this out with a comment, so let's do that. So these are string/text examples, and today is the 6th. Okay, so let's see what else we can do with text. Here's some other examples. In this one, I used Chinese. This says the same thing as "Hello World" in Chinese. You can use really long strings, and this is an emoticon. It's pre-emoji, and you can see I've saved all these different strings as variables. And so if I run this, you can see each one of those strings in this example. Okay, let's keep going. So as I mentioned, strings have special methods and properties that are related to them. An easy way to see what you can do with a string is just to use the console. Um, so I'm going to open the console over here for just a second, and I'm going to make a new string. I'm going to say variable s equals hello world. And so now I have this string s, which is hello world. And if I hit S and then hit the dot, you can see all the different stuff that is related to this string. So there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. Some of them we're not really going to need to use, but some of them are pretty useful. Um, so I can look at things like what is the length of the string. So that tells me how many characters are in the string. You can see it's 12. And so you might notice that that means that it's counting the space, right? If this is 12 characters, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in hello, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in world, and then we have a exclamation point and a space. So since the space doesn't render anything on the screen, sometimes that's kind of confusing, but a space is actually a character as far as the computer is concerned. So we can look at the length of the string. That could be useful for deciding how to design our program around it. We can also get things like we can get part of the string. So if I say a substring and I set the where I want it to start and end, I could say a substring from 0 to 5. That's just going to give me hello. So I can cut parts of the string out, starting with a certain number and going to another number. I can also look at specific characters. So if I say string.char at 0, that's going to give me the first character, although I spelled it wrong. So I could compare two strings. I could see if they're the same, or start with the same letter. Or I could check the letter of a string. So there's a lot of different stuff I can do with my string values. I can also replace parts of my string. So in this case, I'm saying string.replace hello and goodbye, and that'll give me a new string that says goodbye world instead of hello world. But it doesn't actually change my original string. It just gives me the result of that. So I'd have to assign it back to the original string to change it. And it also has to match exactly. So another thing to be aware of is that the computer doesn't see capital letters and lowercase letters as the same thing. So if I tried to say replace, but I spelled hello with a lowercase h, it doesn't do anything because there is no instance of lowercase h in the original string, so it doesn't recognize that. So lowercase and uppercase letters are seen as different things in programming. We can add strings together, so I can say hello plus world, and it'll put them together for me. That's called concatenation when you add two strings instead of two numbers. You can see that it doesn't add a space for me. The computer doesn't understand that I'm putting two words together. It literally just sees a random, or not random, but it just sees the letters that we put in there. It doesn't really care what they happen to be. If I want there to be a space there, I can add another string to it, or I can put it inside of one of the original strings like that. So just a couple things that tend to throw people off. Okay, so we already looked at the stroke and the fill. Let's look at some of the other text functions. So we can change the size. We already looked at that. We saw text size will increase the size of our text. We can also set the style. We can set the font. So the style is like italic versus bold, things like that. So if I say text style and I say italic, we get that italic slanted look to our text. And these functions get applied the same way that fill and stroke do. So for example, if I had another string, if I said hello string equals hello world, and so I have another piece of text where I say hello string, and I'm going to put this in the same X position, but I'm going to move it down a little bit so they're not overlapping. Okay, so I have hello world. Let's make this canvas a little bigger. So notice that all of the same styles are being applied to both of my strings. So I have my first string, MMP string, and then my second string, hello world. And they look exactly the same because I'm applying the same styles in both cases. But if I only wanted one to be italic, I could just move it down here. And now the first, oops, I have to set it to default. I always forget that. So I could start with the text style, and I actually don't know what the default is. I'm going to try default. No, that's not it. Regular. Maybe it's normal. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I start with the text style normal, so it's not italic or bold. And so my first string at the top is normal text, and then I have italic applied next. So the order, just like our fill and stroke, the order matters here. So like if I moved my stroke down here, we'd see that the stroke only applies. Again, I have to reset it. So let's say stroke is, or let's just say no stroke up here. Okay, so then we get rid of the stroke and then we add the stroke. So I'm going to undo that, but basically it's the same rules apply as when we're adding colors to our shapes. We have to, follow the order of how things are added. Okay, We can also change the text font. And so by default, we can add any of the fonts that you have in your computer and or on your browser. And there's a good website for this, CSS font stack. This will tell you what fonts are available on most computers. So for example, with the sans serif fonts and the serif fonts, it shows us the different fonts, and then it actually shows you the compatibility level. So Arial is a very common font, and you can see the Windows compatibility is 99.84% of Windows machines. So you can basically assume that every Windows machine has access to that font. Mac is 98.74, so it's very high. So this is referring to like, all of the computers in the world, basically. And I don't know how they source these numbers, but they seem to follow what I'm familiar with. So like another example, here's one that's only Mac. Lucida Grande is only Mac. So if I use that on my computer, I'm on a Mac right now, it'll look fine. But if somebody loads it on their computer and it's a PC, then that font's not going to load and it's going to go to the default. So that's something that we have to be aware of when we're making stuff for the internet. So Lucida Grande is 0 on Windows, 100% on Mac. And then there's some that are the other way around. This one called Seago UI is 75% support Windows and 0% Mac. So you want to try to find something that has high support on both, or you can get a font file and load it onto your website so that way it'll always be there. It doesn't really matter if the computer has it or not. Excuse me. So we can do that as well. I can go over to fonts.google.com and find a cool font to use. Let's see if we can find something kind of weird. I'll go to categories and go to uh, display. Those are like the weird ones, I think. Okay, this one's kind of cool. Okay, so let's see if we can get this into our sketch. So I'm going to import this, and there's a couple different ways to do this. I could actually load the file, I could link it in my HTML, or I could import it in my CSS. I think it'll work if I import it in the CSS. That's what I tend to do. So I'm going to give that a shot. So I'm going to copy the CSS import, go back to P5 and go to style.css. And your import statements, maybe you guys have covered this in other classes. This is more of like a general web design thing and less of a programming thing. But in CSS, your import statements always have to come at the top or else they won't work. But this will actually download this font for me. Although I don't think I got the right font. Why does this say Nova Round? Let's remove this. Oh, I have to hit this button first. I always forget that. So I guess I had that selected when I was doing something else, but I have to click on this select and then go to import and then copy this over. Okay, so let's replace that. So now I should be able to use this in P5. Let's give it a try. So I'm going to say text font is, and then I'm going to use the way that Google usually shows you how to do it. So it's just this basically. You have to have quotation marks around it. I added too many quotation marks. Okay, sweet, it worked. So let's do two different fonts. So I'm going to say text font up here is just the default Arial, which I know will work anywhere. And then for my second one, now I have this cool font that I just downloaded. It doesn't really work with the stroke. It's too busy. So let's say no stroke on here. And then the italic, I don't know if that's actually doing anything. Yeah, it is. So it's like leaning it over because we don't actually have an italic style, but I guess it's just trying to figure out how to add that anyway. But yeah, so that's how we can add an extra font. You can either use the default web safe fonts, or you can grab a Google font and import it. And that way, the nice thing about that is you don't have to worry about whether it's supported on other devices because we're actually downloading the font in the browser. All right, so those are our fonts. Let's keep going. Okay, so we can talk a little bit about layout and alignment. I don't think this will be as important, but it's good to go over some of these basics. So I'm going to get a big, long piece of text. I'm just going to use this little lorem ipsum here, which is kind of the default for if you're using some basic text in a graphic design setting. So I'll copy that. Did it copy? Yeah, okay. And so I'm just gonna put another variable up here. I'll just call this one lorem and paste it in here. And so I'm gonna set the text size a little bit smaller. I'll say like 20 here, and then paste in my lorem. And I'll put this in the same X position and move it a little bit farther down the page. And so there we go. There's our lorem ipsum. Let's set the text font to something that'll be supported. I'll do Comic Sans. They have that everywhere. Okay. So notice that the text is going off the edge of the screen. So that's the default. As we looked at in the documentation, we have the X and Y, and we have the text here. But there's these optional parameters for X and Y, but this is really width and height. So if we want our text not to go all the way off the edge of the screen, we can set a box for it. So if I say like 200, now it's basically cutting off at around 200 pixels here and going to the next line down here. So if this doesn't fit, it's going to go to a new line. Excuse me. And so if I increase that 200, then I can change the size of the text box. Sorry, my cough from earlier in the semester is coming back tonight all of a sudden. Okay, so if I want to test this, I could actually just throw mouse X in here and then see, okay, if I move it all the way over, I can try to figure out where I want to get it. Maybe I want it like there, maybe I want it over there. And I can find the right value. Maybe it's like 400. But then I can also set the Y value here. So let me move this up just a little bit more. Or I could just make my canvas bigger. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I can also set the Y value. If I set it to something really small, it's not going to fit any of the text at all. So I don't want to do that. I want to go at least as big as the text. Okay, so there we go. We can see some text. But if I want to see the whole thing, I'm going to have to make it a lot bigger and get to a point where it doesn't cut off. So sometimes it's easier just to leave the Y out unless you have like a very specific set that you need for your design. So I can probably make that a little bit bigger. That looks pretty good. So that's our basic text box, and we're essentially setting where the text goes. And one thing you may notice is that the X position changes when I add the text box. So let's compare. So here's the X position now, or sorry, I'm talking about the Y position. So the Y position is here. And then if I bring that text box back in, I think I said 500. Now this Y stays here, but the text is going down. So instead of just being right here, now we're going down from here. So we can also change the vertical alignment of the text. So once we have this paragraph, it's a little bit easier to see. Let's try a couple different things. So I can say text align. And with text align, I have two parameters. The first is the horizontal alignment, and the second is the vertical alignment. So the default is left and I think top. So if we change this to center, we get center aligned text. It's going to change everything else as well. So let's go up here and say text align is left. That's the default. If I say right, then we get right aligned text. So it's pretty straightforward. If I set this back to left, excuse me, or sorry, center. So now I can also change the vertical alignment with the second parameter. So if I set this to center here, it disappeared. Where'd it go? Maybe I need to set a Y. Okay, yeah, I need to set a Y value there. So if it's centered, then it's centered within whatever this box is. So if I move this up, there it's starting to get a little bit tricky here. But if I set it to top alignment, that means it's going to, oh, now they're all set to top. So let's set the default up here to left center. There we go. Okay, so if I set this to top, so the default is center. You can see it's in the middle of the text. If I set it to top, it moves up. If I set it to bottom, it goes down. So it might be a little bit confusing how that works. So I have a couple examples in here that we can take a look at. So if we look at this string right here, this is our vertical alignment. And so the first is the default of left. So left means wherever this number is, the text goes to the right from there. So it's left aligned. This is center aligned, so it measures the text and puts the center in the middle. And this is right aligned. Whatever this number for x is, then we go to the right, or we go to the left from the right. Then for the vertical alignment, we start with the default. Oh, I guess the default is bottom. Let's replace this up here. That seems off, but whatever. Okay, so the default is left bottom. Then we have left center and left top. So bottom obviously means that the text starts at the bottom. So whatever the y value is here, that's going to align with the bottom of the text. That all changes if our text block is larger. So if our text block is multiple lines, it's going to be up like this. Then center, the y is in the middle of the text. Again, if we have a big block of text, it's going to be going centered like that. And then this is top, y is the top, and the text goes down. So those are the different settings. If you need to use those, you may not really need to worry about that too much, but those are available if we need them. Okay, so then this next one is leading, which is how much space there is between lines. And that one is kind of fun to play with because you can make it interactive. So let's say I wanted to say text leading. And if I say something like 10, it's going to squish it together. If I say something like 50, it's going to stretch it out. But I could also make it interactive. So I can actually set it to interact with my mouse. Let's turn off the Y again. I guess we really need the Y. I think that's a new setting. Okay, so let's make the Y really big. Let's say 400. Okay, that's too big. Let's go back to 200. Okay, so anyway, you can see I'm moving the mouse and that's changing the leading. So it's going up and down according to the space in between lines. So that's kind of cool. And then we can also set, oh, I thought there was another thing. I think there's another thing for the word spacing. Let's take a look. Oh, I guess not. Maybe they got rid of that. They have some new stuff in here. Okay. No worries. That's fine. Okay, so then the last example that I'm going to show you guys is the one where we're actually going to combine some of the properties of the text to make it something interactive. And so we'll do this bit by bit. So let's use our MMP string hello world up there. I'm going to turn this text leading off for a second, or I'll just comment it out. Okay, so for my MMP string, I can make it interactive. I can make it so that it appears and disappears according to my input. Actually, let's do it with the hello world string because that's a little bit more visible. And I feel like this default is off. I feel like that one's right. Anyway, okay. So with my hello string, I can see how big the string is by getting the length. So I can set that to a variable. I can say variable length equals hello string dot length. And just to see what that is, let's log that. So I'll say console.log len. And you're going to see it's 12. Obviously, we can count. That's how many characters there are in the string. But I can use this as a way to interact. So I can create a variable to kind of count how many letters I want to use. So for that, I'm going to use the variable index. Index is like a word that kind of means count, basically like where we are in a count, the index. And so I'm going to use that. I'm going to map that to my mouse x value. So I'm going to say map mouse x. And what I'm going to do basically is map the X position. So my mouse goes from here to here. This is 0. This is the width of my canvas. And, my mouse can basically move anywhere in between. We looked at this with interaction last week. But then I can look at how many characters there are. So there's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, or 12 if we start counting at 1. And what I want to do is basically figure out how to map it so that these characters get cut off once I hit these different thresholds with my X position. And that's pretty easy to do with our map function. So we're just taking this range, 0 to width, which is I think 600 or 800, something like that, and then this range, which is 0 to there's 12 characters, but it's really 11 because we start in programming, we start counting at 0. Um, or we can really use 12. It doesn't matter that much actually, since we're just going to go over. But anyway, let's take a look at that. So we're mapping mouse X from 0 to the width of the canvas, and then we're mapping our characters from 0 to len, which is the length of our string. We can use a variable here. We don't have to. We could just say 11 here, but using a variable makes it so that we could change the string and the program would still work the same way. So then we need to get a substring. So a substring is basically what we saw before, where we can use the beginning of the string and the end of the string. So I'm going to make a new variable for this. I don't really have to do it this way. I could write this all together, but it just makes it a little bit easier to see. So I'm going to call this variable sub, and I'm going to take hello string dot substring, and I'll start at 0. I could also move the beginning of the string, but let's just move the end. And I'm going to go to the index. And the index will update as I move the mouse. So let's put sub in here. And now we can see my string appears as I move the mouse across the screen. So I can make my text interactive or animated using this basic formula. I'm actually not getting that exclamation point at the end, which is kind of interesting because the length, I wonder why that is. Oh, no, I am. I'm just not going far enough. I just wasn't going far enough with the mouse because the canvas is pretty wide. There we go. Okay. And as I mentioned, the nice thing about this is it doesn't matter what the string is because we're using the length of the string here. So if I said hello world and I added a couple exclamation points to the end, I wouldn't have to change my code. It would still do the exact same thing. So that's one way. There's lots of other stuff that we can do with text, but I just wanted to kind of show a simple way to add some interaction. I think there's just one more thing left to do, and then I'll let you guys get started on your homework. I don't actually see it in the notes here, so I'm just going to show you guys anyway. Or maybe I show it later. Let's see. Oops. What did I do? Okay. Huh. Okay, I don't know why I can't search. For some reason, the default of this is full screen. Okay, whatever. I'm just gonna scroll through real quick. Okay, I don't see it in here, so I'm just gonna go over it. It may be that I go over it at a later time. But if you see these little edges in the M's, what's happening there is that basically there's a program when we draw a stroke around a corner like that that determines how to draw the edges of the stroke. And if you have a really sharp corner, it's basically getting confused and the stroke is sort of like overlapping in a weird way. And a way to get rid of that. And sometimes people don't really care, but some people usually, typically, if I don't cover it, people will ask about it. So I'm just going to cover it real quick. I'm actually going to make the stroke even wider to kind of show it even more. Um, and I'll show you guys how to get rid of it. So it's a little tricky, but there's basically a couple things that we have to do. So get rid of stroke edges. So we have to change the settings of the renderer from the canvas. And there's only one way to do this, which is to get a reference to the canvas. And the way we can get a reference is we can assign the canvas function back to a variable. So I can say variable canvas equals create canvas. And so usually we don't do this because we just want a canvas. We don't really care about setting the values of the canvas. But if we log this canvas real quick, you'll see that there's a lot of different settings in here that we usually just use the defaults. So if we log the canvas, you can see there's all these different settings. Some of them we can change through code, others we can't. And so if we want to set what's called the miter limit. The miter limit is like how much the strokes can overlap with each other. What we can do is say canvas.context2D. That's basically just the 2D graphics rendering system. Dot miter limit equals like 0, I think will fix it. Or no, I'll just get an error. Huh. Let's. I must have spelled something wrong. Let's look it up. P5 canvas miter limit. Drawing context. Okay, not context 2D. Drawing context. Okay, so if we set this to like 1, you see we get these like little sharp edges. So it's like cutting off the edges. And that kind of looks cool. You might like it like that. But if we set it to 2, that's what you probably might expect more is just hard corners. And if we go above 2, eventually we're going to see a little bit of these edges. If I go to like 10, that's when you see the edges. Okay, so we probably want it around 2, but if you like that stylized look, you can go with 1. Anyway, you don't really need to do this, but what happens is people always say, oh, there's these weird edges, and how do you fix them? And this is how you fix them. Okay, so that was the last thing I wanted to cover. There's a lot of different stuff that you can do with text, so hopefully this kind of goes over some simple basics, and then you guys can play around with adding stuff on your own. As far as the assignment goes, let's take a look at that. So for the assignment for this week, it's just creating a rough draft of a logo or meme. It really can be about whatever you want. I just use that as a premise because both of those tend to combine image and text. On Wednesday, we're going to talk about adding images into the sketch. This is pretty easy. You could probably do this on your own if you want to, skip ahead and just look at these images. But I'm going to go over that on Wednesday. For now, if you want to just play with the text, you could think about like what might be a cool meme to work on, or what would be a logo that you would want to work on. It doesn't have to be a logo that like for you or something that exists. It could just be like a made up company or brand or product or uh, anything really. And if you have other ideas for stuff that combines images with text, feel free to use whatever you think will be interesting there. Um, so I'm going to stop the video here.